After a 10-year sleep, Albina is stirring and demanding changes for the black children of Portland's black neighborhoods. Next year, few of Albina's kids will be bussed out of their districts. A new middle school will open in the black community. The superintendent of the Portland Public Schools has been fired. The new chairman of the school board is black. And what it took for that to happen was pressure.
Every little piece of progress that black people have made has been made because of agitation and pressure. Everything. History shows that's the only thing that most institutions respond to in this country is pressure. Pressure, unrelenting pressure, day after day after day.
Behind that pressure are people. And what's happening in the schools may signal a change in what's happening in all phases of life in Albina. 25,000 blacks in Portland. That's enough to build some pressure if they can unite on issues. For the first time in years, there's a feeling in parts of the community they just might do it. That's where we're headed in this half hour. We've already felt the pressure. We're after the feeling. Arthur Keller says he and his wife are average parents. Their kids are average kids. According to Arthur Keller, theirs is not an exceptional family. Keller has the advantage of some college. He's a skilled worker at Penwalt Chemical. At home, the Kellers put value on education, and their two youngest children On the day we filmed, some of the married children were visiting with their kids, and any household with 8 kids in it, black or white, is chaotic.
She got it, but that's it.
The only time it was quiet at the Kellers was when they said grace. The white stuff on the plates, incidentally, is grits. Tradition, family, church, and education all count high at the Kellers.
Trying to instill in our children to get a good education. We try that, we do that in the homes. You got to have that push out of the home. You just definitely got to have it. Mine, we have after 18 or up until 18, you must abide by the rules of the family. And that's to get your education, try and get a skill to get a job.
The Kellers are veterans of the Portland school busing program. Because their children are black, the school district was busing them every morning, from their home in Northeast to Multnomah Elementary School on the opposite side of the city.
What I found wrong with it, and the children did too, and it was because they had to get up 6:30 in the morning, and no teenager liked to get up early in the morning. I had to get them out of bed 6:30 in the morning. On rainy days, I had to rush them out to King's facility to catch their bus. When they were going out to Multnomah, it was a great difference. Their grades were poor. The teachers were calling me in on conference. They couldn't understand why they was crabby. They would sleep in the morning.
Even before the school district cut back on what it called the administrative transfer program, the Kellers had arranged for their children to attend a school closer to home. Maggie Marks is on the other end of the spectrum, a single mother living in Albina, raising 6 children on child support and welfare. Her children were bused across the river to school, and they were given no choice, no option.
I'd like to say that they have their basic education in their neighborhood. I'd like to feel it this way. And I feel that at the age that they did transfer, they were ready, in a sense. And I feel that good has come about it. I like to think more good has come rather than bad. You know, there were some ugly incidents, but we overcome them. Like a lot of other parents, I were kind of uptight, you know, why did they have to be bused and, you know, so forth and so on. But I was against it, and to a certain degree I still am. But if it's, you know, for better education and integration, well then I'll cope with it.
The Marks children learn to cope. The Kellers insist their children go to a closer school. For years, those things happened and no one knew. What caught the public's attention was last spring's one-day black boycott of the schools. That made headlines and got television coverage.
Depending upon how many people we have, that would determine exactly how big an area we would cover.
The boycott was organized by a small group of people who call themselves the Black United Front. They urged parents to keep their children out of school for one day to demonstrate their unity and their insistence that the schools must change, that they had to offer black parents more chance for involvement in how the schools were run, on questions of curriculum, and the number of black teachers teaching in black neighborhoods. The Black United Front is not that big and doesn't reflect the views of all the black community. But the case being made by leader Ron Herndon is being heard, and the boycott was felt.
Really felt proud. One woman says the proudest day as a black person she had experienced in Portland, because it showed that all of us can stick together on an issue. And for so long, black people in Portland have been told we can't stick together. Black folks can't stick together. And I think everybody felt good, really felt good. And you can just think the way you felt, you know, and you drive by schools or you see the TV shows, the news shows, they show a classroom and no black folks in it, or maybe one or two, or Jefferson, 90% of all the black kids stay home. So that's one thing it does. It teaches people that the lies are not correct, that we can stick together, that we are adults, and as adults, as being men, women, and young men and women like you, that if we are confronted by injustice, or if we are confronted by something that's wrong, that we can act to do something about it. For so long, one of the things that happened to black people in this country, we were taught that we can't act, that we cannot do anything to control our lives. That's why Martin Luther King, that whole civil rights struggle was so important, that it showed that we can act, we are capable of doing things to take control of our lives. Slavery, I mean, if you're going to own slaves, you don't want a guy that's a slave to think that he can control his life, do you? Because the first thing he's going to do is run away or do something to bust up the plantation. So you don't want that. So for years, efforts were made to teach black people that we cannot control our lives. So that comes out of it. You teach that lesson once again, that we can act as one.
The Black United Front has helped force changes in education. Now it's targeting the Portland police. The front established a hotline number where citizens can call to register complaints about the police. And it's hoping to file a class action suit to cut off federal funding to the Portland police until more blacks are hired on the force. Crime is a problem in Albina. There are twice as many murders in Albina as in the city as a whole. Twice as many burglaries, twice as many rapes. Most of those crimes are committed by blacks against other blacks. Citywide crime statistics show that there is always more crime in economically depressed neighborhoods. And Albina has always been economically depressed. There are twice as many blacks out of work as whites. Close to 1 out of 3 young black men are unemployed, and many of them have stopped looking for jobs. There's little chance of finding work in the area. In a survey of light industries along Union Avenue, Killingsworth, Alberta, and Williams, of 516 employees, just 25 of them, 4% of the workforce, was black. There are exceptions. Tektronix has opened an assembly plant on Northeast Union Avenue and is hiring entry-level workers. Most of them are black. But other large Portland companies continue to have trouble meeting their goals for affirmative action. One of the main reasons for Tektronix's move was the ability to change their hiring record using the existing black workforce in Albina. Almost $8 million is going into revamping Union Avenue through the Albina area. Businessmen expected the work to strengthen the commercial sites and bring in more industry, but now they have real doubts. Street parking is gone, and median strips have eliminated left-turn access to many businesses. Realtor Herman Plummer now questions why the work was done.
I wish I knew. I don't know why. With the exception of one thing, it's going to ease the traffic from I-5. And that's about the only advantage I can see in it. It's going to cause people to start at one end and try to shoot for Vancouver, Washington. I would not object to say that the results indicate conspiracy. Hell yes. It's bad.
That kind of suspicion comes easy in Albina. There was a similar improvement project in the Emmanuel Hospital area. Whole blocks of businesses and homes were torn down. Much of it slum, much of it undesirable. But while there was money to clear it, there was never money to put up anything in its place. And the blocks lie vacant. Again, Black United Front leader Ron Herndon.
You know, we were talking about the land is here now. What could happen if the community is able to organize itself around economics? You could put in low-income housing here, since there's such a need for that in the black community. You could erect low-income housing. You could try to encourage businesses to come in that would hire the people here, because it's like businesses are in this area now. You see a lot of businesses around here. They don't hire black people, but I think that we will be able to develop the kind of structure, if we stick together, that can vastly improve over what you see here now, which is nothing but barren ground. We have no way to go but up.
The Reverend John Jackson is the other half of the leadership of Portland's Black United Front. 25 years older than Ron Herndon, Jackson is a longtime leader in the civil rights movement. He served 2 terms as local president of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. He's a former president of the Albina Ministerial Alliance and the Portland Council of Churches.
See, Jesus isn't going to bother to try and instruct you when you need a friend. He's not going to bother to try and repeat words to you when you need a friend. If I'm hungry, don't come to me and tell me a whole lot of stuff about what I ought to believe in. No, you get a loaf of bread under your arm and come on to me and pass out the bread. If I'm in prison, don't come and give me no lecture about how I got in prison. I know how I got in prison. Don't come to me telling me what the Lord gonna do to me because I'm in prison. No, you just visit with me. And give me your expression of sympathy.
According to Jackson, the Black United Front is sustained by the churches of Albina. The church is the front's source for money, and through local ministers, its contact with the community. The choice of John Jackson as co-chairman of the front was calculated. Ron Herndon applies the pressure and makes the demands, but Jackson provides the negotiating link with the white establishment. What is surprising is not that the front works that way, but that John Jackson admits it.
See, Ron comes along and says certain thing, I come along and say something else, you know. When we say different things. We're saying the same thing, you know, but I'm offering an alternative. While he's saying we're not going to take this, you know.
Look at here, look at here, look at here.
And that kind of confuses the folk, you know, so they say, well, let's take this other alternative, you know. Well, that's what we wanted in the first place, was the other alternative. But people don't realize we're strategizing. We have to study white people in order to get along with them. They don't have to study us, because they don't work for us. We work for them. And in order to get along with them, we've got to find out, you know, how do you get along with them, you know, without being exterminated like the Indians, you know. So we know one way is, which Martin Luther practiced, is to make them conscience-stricken, you know, and let their conscience become something that they can't sleep with, you know, and then they begin to help you, you know. We were pushing for a middle school in the district, you know. It looked like we weren't going to get a middle school. So what we did was we pushed for 2 middle schools. Well, when we start pushing for the 2nd middle school, they gave us the 1st middle school. Once we got to making a lot of noise about a 2nd middle school, we took their mind off the 1st middle school because they conceded at that point.
Jackson says the same strategy was applied when the district announced the middle school principal would be white, not black.
We talked very hard against the new principal, you know, and we were aware that they weren't going to change that principle. But if we talked strong enough, we'd get a good assistant, black. And then the next time around, we'd get a black principal.
That worked.
It worked, because we got a black assistant, a good black assistant, who probably will do much more with operating the thing than the principal. And this is something else that we're aware of. Portland is a real proud city. They don't like any publicity to get out that's adverse in Portland. And if you wanna get something done in Portland, you know, particularly with getting something from white people, you try to mess up their pride. Now, when you mess up their pride, they'll deal, because they don't want to get bad reports out. This is a model city here. They publicize that all around, you know. Goldsmith in Washington talking about the model cities, you know, model city here, Portland this, Portland that. We got a good reputation, you know, and we don't want to ruin that reputation nationwide. The summer that we had the riots, do you know how much money I collected just to do things during that summer? I collected $70,000. I collected $70,000. You know how I got it? Just going talking in churches. We collected enough money to buy a house, we started a theater. We did a lot of things, you know, that summer, just to keep down the riots, because these people don't want to riot. They don't want anything like that. And just one Unitarian church, one sermon, I got $5,000. Just one sermon down at Unitarian church, you know. And I was picking up money like that all over the place, you know, just to keep from having a riot that next summer. You know, because that's the kind of town Portland is.
And speaking of Portland, coming up next is Portland's #1 group. That's right, Sheer Ecstasy. As we let Bruce Carter kick the funky licks in the background, now if Nate'll just jump up on a taste of funky bass so that I can throw a taste of soul in your face as we go around once again the 360 degrees soulful sounds of Portland's own pleasure from the album Special Things, spreading that good feeling around the Rose City town. Hey, on a sunny day, the Dapper One with you, feeling funkier than ever on FM 90.7 KBOO. Hey!
You feel so good, you get such a rush from life, you just can't hide. When you're happy, on a natural high, can't push away the strife, you can't deny it. When you're happy, sometimes it's all you got when you're down and you need a brighter day. If you believe it, you can achieve it and make a better way. Why don't you spread
There's something surprising happening in the south end of what most Portlanders think of as Albina. Maybe the most important change of all, it's already reached the street where Ron Herndon lives. And when he talks about it, it sounds a little like he's saying, there goes the neighborhood.
Like the house over here is one, a black family had lived in there several years. They got old and moved out a year or so ago. White family moved in, and up the street there are a couple of other houses, the exact same thing has happened there. Black families have moved out for one reason or the other, and they've been replaced by white families. So this has been called, this area over here near the Lloyd Center has been called one of the most desirable pieces of real estate in the country because it is close to so many amenities that people seem to want. Public transportation, shopping center close to Coliseum, downtown Portland. And you do have a lot of younger white families moving in. And on the surface, many people will say, well, what's wrong with that? Well, given that it's much more difficult for black people in the country to get decent jobs. It's much more difficult to get a loan from the bank to buy a house. It all works against the possibility of black people being able to maintain a stable community.
What organizers like Ron Herndon must have is a political base. And right now, that base is built on geography just as much as it is on race. If enough white families come back from the suburbs, we're going to see blacks dispersed, probably further north and northeast through the city. And parts of the district of Albina may change fast, in ways never dreamed of 10 years ago. The facts and the feelings all point to change. And on the way, we may see more picket signs and hear some tough talk and the threat of more boycotts. The sense of change is in the neighborhood, and from within and without, the changes are coming. It was quiet in Portland's black community for a lot of years. There were no riots and hardly a protest. There's a feeling here now. Those times are gone.
It's not as if people were asking for something that was outlandish or radical. It's right. It's something that all citizens in this country are supposed to be guaranteed. So I think that if the community stays together, that you'll see more changes that are brought about. And if the pressure is kept on. If you ever see a lessening of the pressure, you'll see the progress stop at that point.